Bit of an impromptu video today, guys. I've got the Surron Ultra Bee behind me here, and it has the WP 43mm fork mounted to the bike. We've actually had this fork on and off of this bike a lot of times over the last year, ultimately just kind of shelving this project as we work on other stuff, but it's back on the bike, and I thought it'd be cool to pull the curtain back a little bit, show you what's working and not working, and our process for figuring it out. So thought that would be some interesting stuff for you Surron Ultra Bee owners to see. And also, in addition, we have the EXT REA Shock on the back, so we'll dive into that a little bit and show you what's what. All right, so looking at the Ultra Bee here, we've got the WP fork on it. Obviously, one major thing that is a concern at the moment is these clamps here. So these WP clamps have less offset than the stock KKE clamps on the Ultra Bee. So basically what that is doing, you're moving the clamps back towards the bike. It's limiting the steer lock to lock there. It should have a pretty simple solution to fix that. We will see how that turns out, but that's one issue with it, is you're losing a bit of turning radius. The benefit to it though is that by having less offset on the clamps, you've got more trail in the front of the bike. So the front wheel is being pushed out a little bit further, which is something that I think this bike really needs. And so it should make the bike feel more stable. The other issue that we're running into is clearance. So this is a 21-inch wheel. It's our KKE wheel, and you can see at full travel, it will likely hit this controller, which is an obvious problem. So the heavy hitter clamp will allow, it's a drop clamp, so basically it will allow you to slide your fork tubes down a little bit. It'll allow us to gain a little bit of spacing there. So hopefully we don't hit the controller, but we will mess with that after we test this. Next thing up is the front wheel. As I said, we're running a KKE 21-inch wheel, and we manufactured spacers to make this fit on the WP fork. The only issue is clearance with the KTM 85 brake caliper is really close there. You can see it is not much tolerance. I think our wheel is true, so I guess we'll find out, but yeah, it's pretty close. So we're gonna run it and see, but that may be a concern as well. So anyways, let's get on the bike and see how it rides. All right, Ultra Bee WP. We're gonna take it easy to start here. Just make sure everything is working good. Fender's a little cockeyed. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. So I'm just going to be riding on this turn track to start. So far I'm not hearing any weird noises or anything like that. That's a good start. Actually, that's a good point. I should reset these just so we can see what we're working with here. These indicators will help us see how much travel we're using instead of just guessing. That guy up there. Technically, you only really need one, but why not do both? Let's see where we're at. So yeah, this is our Stage 3 Ultra Bee. Well, I guess technically it's not Stage 3 anymore because we've got all this new suspension on it. So probably Stage 3.5 / Stage 4 maybe. We'll decide later. Could just say Stage 3 and then some. But anyways, it's got some goodies on it. Obviously has the KKE 2118 wheels. It's got the EBMX X9000 controller and the big Mama Jamma battery, 80 volt. So what that means is I have it set currently to 15 kilowatts for mode 1, 20 kilowatts for mode 2, and 25 for mode 3. I'm currently running it in mode 2, so that is 20 kilowatts. Plenty of power. As you can see, it lofts the front wheel. Woo-hoo. It's exciting. But yeah, man, this thing turns good, feels more stable. The shock and the fork are working really well with each other. Obviously, I'm just on a turn track, so I'm not hitting anything big or something that would cause the bike to use all of its travel, but we'll do some laps on here and see if that happens. But yeah, man. This bike feels super plush now. Front end feels way more robust. And so does the rear end too. Props to EXT. I don't want EXT to get overshadowed by this WP fork, because that shock is feeling great too. But honestly, on this type of stuff, there isn't like really anything that's too sharp where I'm like super bothered by the turning radius. So I think like motocross type riding should be okay. It's probably just trail riding and that type of thing that you're really gonna notice that lack of turning radius, or like it's a 90-degree kind of turn. Something where you're, I mean, I suppose that's a 90-degree turn and I did all right, but yeah. You'll find limitations somewhere for sure. So I've got roughly 100 PSI in the fork right now. Feels pretty supple. Keep in mind this thing is not tuned at all, so could probably go for a little bit more PSI, but probably need some different valving too. But man, shock and fork, feeling great. The only downside is how much this stuff is going to cost if you want to do it. It's definitely not cheap. We are probably going to offer this setup. We've got some options. If you're watching this and you don't see it on our site and you do want some information on it, feel free to send us an email. We can talk to you about it, but we just want to make sure we work out all the kinks and have a completely dialed solution for you before we start trying to put this in the hands of customers. But I know there's plenty of you out there that would love to have this. I have a feeling I am not going to be taking this off of this bike. The reason why this will be so expensive is obviously you're getting a whole new fork, triple clamp, potentially a different upper top clamp, the mounting kit to make it work, front brake, caliper, rotor, master cylinder, lever, new plastics. It's a completely new front end, so far I haven't heard any weird noises or felt any weird hits, so should mean that things are holding up. All right, let's check these markers. Yeah, I mean, that's actually pretty good. I would say, you know, be interesting to do a couple hits. Maybe we'll try that next, see where that ends up. But so far, that's the travel that we're using on this turn track. You know, there's some whoops and whatnot, hitting a pretty decent speed in some of this stuff and lofting the front wheel. So you know, using a little bit more, maybe 60% travel. So taking this thing on the track or anything a little bit with some bigger hits might be all right. Might need to add some PSI to it, but for trail riding, it's probably right in the sweet spot, and it does feel really good. This should actually be a pretty good test for this thing. On the mini Moto track here. See how it takes some of this stuff. I think it passed the test on the small track here. I'm not hearing any rubbing, which is honestly pretty surprising. So for reference, this is how much travel we use. We still have a couple inches, if not 3 inches, to spare there in travel. So, you know, if you really compress the fork end to end, it probably would have rubbed on the controller, but we didn't get to that point. So yeah, not bad. Okay, so that's a wrap on day one. Testing actually went much better than I thought. We didn't get any rubbing on the controller. I still have a couple inches of travel left to spare, so maybe if I compress the fork all the way up, that we would experience that, but so far it's all good. We are definitely still going to try the heavy hitter drop clamp because I feel like that's the smartest thing to do regardless of travel. Get that front end a little bit higher, see how that feels, and add some clearance. So we'll do that next.
And we did just that. This is our Surron Ultra Bee, with the heavy hitter upper clamp mounted up, and everything else stayed exactly the same.
All right, day two here. We've got the heavy hitter drop clamp up top and the WP lower. And man, immediately, I think this thing is riding better. I actually didn't get any rubbing yesterday on that front wheel, which is surprising to me, but we slid the fork tubes down in the clamps a little bit more, so that gave us more clearance, and it also gave us a little bit more height in the front. And I can notice that height immediately. It's really not much, but every little bit that you slide fork tubes up and down is pretty noticeable for steering. But yeah, man, it feels like it corners so much better to me. The bike feels more stable for sure. Yeah, I really like it. So you can see the travel that we used yesterday with the stock WP clamps. Now we've got the drop clamp, so we've pushed the forks down a little bit, but we didn't get any rubbing yesterday, so we should be completely clear today. And we've got plenty of room to work with here. You can see that, you know, until you get into the tapered part of the fork tube, you still have a bit of wiggle room. Like we could probably go down another ½ inch, if not maybe even more. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it. We might experiment dropping it down a little bit more too and see, but right now, so far so good. Another thing that you have to take into account when you slide the fork tubes down, the further away that brake caliper gets from its mount here, we run out of some real estate. So if you go too much further than that, I think we'd want to run some more brake line. But so far, that should be good where it's at, so we'll keep that running the way that it is. All right, so EXT REA. Let's talk about that a little bit. Also feeling great. I feel like this is currently the perfect combo for the WP fork. The rear end of the bike feels super stable. I have not changed settings on the REA, and right out of the box, this thing feels awesome. I set sag, but aside from that, it's just right out of the box. The rear end feels super stable. It doesn't have that weird hook in it that you feel with the stock shock. So, yeah. Kudos to the guys at EXT. This is actually really good, and this pairing right here is awesome. I wish you guys could feel it. Definitely not cheap to do this, but man, how important is suspension? To me, it's everything. I would take suspension over power any day, especially on these types of bikes. I will do a bit of a shameless plug for our tuned fork and shock though, because that makes a huge difference. I'll probably do a side-by-side comparison with this stuff so you guys can see what the differences are, but also a pretty big price difference, so something to keep in mind. You know, these bikes are best suited when you can keep them affordable. It's kind of the beauty of them. But yeah, we want to see what works and what doesn't work and put the best stuff that we can on it, so we will show you all of that. So even if you're not thinking of doing a WP conversion or a REA shock, I know it's expensive. It is worth it if you have the funds to do so, but if not, still highly recommend getting the stock KKE stuff tuned, because that has made a world of difference to me. I used to not really care to ride the bike after a while just because I felt like I was getting beat up on it, but now I can ride it all day and I'm happy. All right, guys, so that pretty much concludes what I'm working on today. Just to recap, you know, we've got the WP fork and the EXT REA shock on this bike. Started out with the stock WP clamps, and I didn't have any rubbing issues with what I was riding today. Maybe if you're doing big motocross hits and stuff like that, you might get some rubbing. So to test that, basically put the heavy hitter drop clamp on, just on the top. That allowed us to slide the forks down a little bit, give us a little bit more height in the front, which is needed and feels a lot better. And also that pretty much pads us from any issue of the front wheel rubbing against the controller, which is obviously important. I didn't have any issues with that caliper being too close to the spokes. Everything's good there. My front wheel's true. And yeah, we're in good shape there. The only thing left to do on my end would be to potentially make some modifications to the steer stops on the Ultra Bee. That will allow a little bit more turning radius. While I was riding here today, I didn't really find that to be an issue, but I could see in an off-road environment where if you're riding single track or hard enduro or anything like that, that you're going to want more turn lock to lock. And so we'll come up with a solution for that. But if that's all that we have left to do on this, I'm pretty psyched because this setup feels really awesome. I'm excited to try it some more, compare it to our tuned stuff, and yeah, just keep improving this stuff. So hope you guys enjoyed pulling the curtain back a little bit. I think we're pretty close to having this ready. If any of you guys are interested in it, we'll probably put it up on the site at some point. But if you have any questions, leave us a comment in the comment section below, or anything direct, you can email us, support@electriccyclerider.com. Keep your eyes peeled at parts.electriccyclerider.com to see any of this stuff. And thanks as always for watching. See you guys.